Zamazenta stocks are headed to the moon. And let me guess, you don't have a counter for Zamazenta. I'm here to tell you, that's okay. A lot of players don't have a good Zamazenta counter right now. And that would partially explain Zamazenta's success over the past weekend at the Stockholm Regional. Much like any other metagame strategy, you must first learn about the beast in order to counter the beast. Zamazenta is a steel fighting type Pokemon, which comes off a bit odd as it's less defensive typing than its counterpart, Zacian. This nets Zamazenta an additional weakness, adding fighting to the already fire and ground weakness of Zamazenta. This nets Zamazenta an additional weakness that Zacian doesn't have, fighting. The two share fire and ground as a weakness, but Zamazenta will take a neutral hit Psychic, Flying, and Fairy, where Zacian will resist them. Zamazenta reaches 700 stat total just like Zacian, with 92 points in HP, 120 points in attack, 140 points in defense, 80 points in special attack, 140 points in special defense, and 128 points in speed. Zamazenta is fairly straightforward with its move pool, making it fairly simple to pilot, increasing its overall value as a Pokemon. Its moves, such as Behemoth Blade or Heavy Slam, is the steel coverage it generally goes with. Then it has Body Press, which can KO Incineroar, but we'll get to that in a minute. Iron Defense or Wide Guard for its setup or supportive moves on it, and then Protect for more sustainability on your Zamazenta. So how does Zamazenta KO Incin exactly? You see, Zamazenta has the ability Dauntless Shield, boosting its defense stat by 1 stage upon entering battle. This is a big deal as the move Body Press calculates damage off the defense stat, so these pesky Intimidators such as Incineroar are not only weak to Body Press, but can't rely on Intimidate to weaken Zamazenta's main damage output. But for all you Incineroar fans out there, don't worry. The best competitive Pokemon of all time does have counterplay into Zamazenta. Since we're already talking about counterplay, let's talk about a few Pokemon that counter Zamazenta. Alright, the first Pokemon I want to talk about is Incineroar. Incineroar is a pretty decent counter to Zamazenta. While it is weak to Rain, which Zamazenta generally usually has on the team with Pelipper, and it is a bit risky, the Terra Ghost type does make you immune to those body presses, and you could toss out a Will-O-Wisp, which is one of the only ways to neutralize Zamazenta's damage output. Since the Intimidate really won't affect it, especially with Body Press and Heavy Slam, so the Parting Shot and Intimidate are kind of awkward. However, if you have the Safety Goggles item for partner Amoongusses that love to come on the Rain Cores and Terra Ghost, you can force them to Body Press you, wasting a turn, and launch out a Will-O-Wisp. Skeleturge and Ceruledge are going to fall under the same category. These are Ghost-type Pokemon that are also Fire, so they're going to be immune to the Body Press and absolutely resist any Steel move, whether it be Behemoth Bash or Heavy Slam. So these are kind of niche picks. These obviously won't fit on every team like Incineroar. However, these will not require your Terra type. And in formats like this, these two Pokemon will get more successful as the teams are kind of built more around their restricted. So being able to shut off a regional winning restricted is very good in both of these Pokemon. Both get access to the same move that we were using to counter on Incineroar with Will-O-Wisp, but you will not have to commit that Terra type since you are Ghost and Fire. You just wall that Pokemon up. Getting the Zamazenta to rotate out is very huge as it loses this +1 defense stat, although I feel like versus these two, they'll either use the Rain mode to try to break through these early and leave the Zamazenta in the back, or they'll just simply ignore it and put the Zamazenta in the back and grind you down with another form of a mode. And that's why I don't think these are as strong, but these are counters directly and they will wall out a Zamazenta. Up next, I'm going into the restricted area, and the later we go, the stronger the Pokemon get as far as the counter goes. And I think Lunala is a very, very strong counter to the Zamazenta. With Trick Room, you can gather speed control over Zamazenta teams and basically have your partner Pokemon take advantage of the physical defense. With Trick Room, you gain speed control yourself over Zamazenta with a 128 base speed stat. It's pretty quick. It's not the fastest in the format, but it's definitely fast. So if you put those Pokemon such as Incineroar, Skeleturge, or whatever you decide to choose with your Lunala, Incineroar would be a great option for Fake Out plus Trick Room, and then you could just not worry about the Body Press. You're faster. And you could just fake that Zamazenta out, Trick Room, and then you could just Will-O-Wisp it under Trick Room, right? Because you have the speed control. That's nice. Also, the Ghost typing again here, right? Ghost type immune to the Body Press, so they're forced to do Heavy Slam or Behemoth Bash. Most carry Heavy Slam, and since this is a restricted Pokemon, they are generally heavier, and Lunala doesn't take that much damage, especially with the Shadow Shield ability, which, if that full HP damage taken from attacks are halved. So I think this is a good restricted option if you want to build your team going for the LA Regionals and you want to catch some people off guard. I do think Lunala stocks will go up. Zacian Crowned is another honorable mention. not only does Zacian Crown enjoy the rain mode that the most of these Zamazenta teams bring with the Pelipper Amoonguss style teams, but it also carries Sacred Sword, right? And Zamazenta is weak to fighting, thanks to it being fighting in steel instead of fairy steel. So having a Sacred Sword that can 2-hit KO Zamazenta, even at +1, is very, very nice. And Zacian is just a very threatening Pokemon and very good, and it just wants to come in the rain. You can even change the Terra type here instead of going for damage. You can honestly go Grass type to abuse the fact that Amoonguss will probably come on that team, and then you're just getting your Sacred Swords off where they want to go, as well as protecting the Zacian in the rain. Generally, the rain mode probably won't come into your Zacian, but it's just nice to have the option to take advantage of their rain for them. And lastly, I do speak about this Pokemon a lot, but it is that Calyrex Shadow Rider. Now, this Pokemon is very, very good, and I have been preaching about how good this Pokemon is. It obviously has a lack of results right now, but for a Zamazenta counter, this is a good one. It's not taking a crazy amount of damage from the Heavy Slam. It can live at least 2, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, with a little bit of a bulkier set, and it is immune to that body press. This is very important because a Calyrex set such as this with the Nasty Plot can just freely set up in front of the Zamazenta. They're usually Terra Grass right now, so you can just fake them out. Nasty Plot, and the Zamazenta is boosting up on the defense side. Even if it doesn't have body press, that +1 goes on the defense side. Now, Zamazenta has a crazy special defense stat in 140, so it will live the hit, even Terra Ghost, I believe, at +2. However, it's doing so much damage and you're threatening it that even getting the rotation out into something like an Incineroar to eat this hit is just value, because you're chipping that Incineroar down to where then you can like protect, get your Rillaboom in and fake it out and do some more damage, or, you know, start to sweep the team. Just forcing it out and getting the Zamazenta to drop that +1 is super valuable. Up next is a very interesting one. Everyone would assume that Flutter Mane is just not a good counter to Zamazenta since it carries the Heavy Slam and the Behemoth Bash at times. And one notable thing to remember about Flutter Mane is it does die to a -1 Heavy Slam. So even if you intimidate it, the Heavy Slam will KO Flutter. But what's interesting is if you support Flutter Mane the correct way, because it's steel and fighting, this fairy type hit is actually neutral. So a Moonblast off of a Specs Flutter with just 116 on your special attack is a 2-hit KO. So if you have something like Amoonguss that I'll show you later beside Flutter Mane, this is a very, very, very threatening lead for that team, specifically because Amoonguss is going to take advantage of the rain that they want to bring. You can just threaten the Pelipper off with the Moonblast, right, and lock into Moonblast. And you could just take advantage of chipping away at the team. Urshifu is another one, where I'll show you this Amoonguss in a minute, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But the Urshifu comes on that team, and you can just threaten it with this Pokemon. Up next, we have Tornadus. I think Tornadus is decent counter to Zamazenta. You have the flying type, so you resist the body press, which is a huge deal, right? Then the Rocky Helmet item is going to be very, very important for that, as Heavy Slam plus body press or physical move, so any chip damage on that Pokemon is just insanely good. Air Slash over Bleak Wind, because usually they carry that Pelipper with the Wide Guard. You do have Taunt for that if you want to, but that takes one turn where they can set up. But I think the reason this is so good is you can get speed control over their Zamazenta. You can taunt the Zamazenta so it can't Wide Guard or Iron Defense, depending on what set it is. And once you get that speed control up, you can try to flinch it. And remember, again, a lot of people forget that it is fighting fairy type. So it is neutral air slashes that are going to come off of Tornadus, who has a decent special attack stat at 125. So you're going to be chipping away with your support mon, which is valuable. And if the Zamazenta decides to hit this back, it's going to take damage, right? Even those fake outers are not going to enjoy hitting this with the Rocky Helmet. Lastly, Sunny Day. You could basically turn their Pelipper into an inaccurate Pokemon. Yeah, it will get the Weather Ball on the fire side, but Sunny Day cutting off the weakness and powering up those fire types can also threaten Zamazenta as well. Even though some of the fire types like Incineroar are physical, it's just a nice little option. You can throw something like a Chi-Yu on there, and all of a sudden your Chi-Yu is just doing massive damage in the sun. Up next is Amoonguss. Now this is an interesting one. Now again, a lot of them are Terra Grass, so I made this right after the regional, and I do think this is a very good counter. However, caution, a lot of them are Terra Grass here, but you can run Clear Smog, and if they Terra Grass to dodge the Spore, then you can just get rid of their defense boost. Rocky Helmet's, again, another valuable item for those physical Pokemon that want to make contact, such as Urshifu that are on the team, and the Zamazenta. So if you can Spore them, you can bait the Terra. The Urshifu doesn't want to come into this, which is on the team usually. And in this case, you know, you're just able to Spore you're able to redirect or bait the Terra, which is very nice because then something like a Tornadus or the Incineroar or something can just go ahead and do that fire damage or flying super effective damage into the grass typing in which you force to Terra. And you basically get the Terra off of any other Pokemon, and then you can just kind of set up the game from there. This one isn't as strong as I was initially thinking, though, because of that Terra Grass, so you do have to be careful for that. Gholdengo is the last one that I want to talk about, and I'm actually going to add one right here. I think Chi-Yu is actually a very, very good, very good counter. So we're going to go over Gholdengo real quick. Gholdengo is just the Iron Defense Body Press king of countering, right? You have good as gold, so those Amoonguss that want to come on the rain version just can't sleep you. And then basically what you do is you just sit there and laugh in front of a Zamazenta's face as you set up a nasty plot and raise your special attack +2. Mega Rain is resisted by both the fighting and the steel of the Zamazenta, so that does stink. However, +2 Shadow Balls are going to chunk this thing away on the special side. You're very bulky, and you can have a good defensive Terra on this. I just slapped Dragon on there, but you can, because of all the water types like Urshifu and Pelipper and stuff, you can have a very defensive Terra and just take advantage of that. So with the Ghost and Steel typing, this is a very, very good counter into Zamazenta teams, and they're very good. Lastly, I did want to speak on this Chi-Yu because I just thought about it while we mentioned it earlier, but actually Chi-Yu loves to go Terra Ghost, right? And you can run Sash if you want to, or you can run Scarf, but the Terra Ghost Chi-Yu is very, very, very good because when you get it, when those Tornadus teams, which we mentioned earlier with the Sunny Day is what made me think about it, those Overheat and those Heat Waves are just very, very strong into the Zamazenta. And I will think that we see a Chi-Yu uptick in usage, actually. So you can run something like Focus Sash, Overheat, Heat Wave, Dark Pulse if you wanted to with Protect. You can run the Nasty Plot set if you're wanting to set this Pokemon up. You can also run Snarl if you're worried about Calyrex Shadow Rider or like Ursaluna Blood Moon and Farigiraf that are, in the metagame. There's a lot of ways that you can run this Pokemon, but the reason I think this is very, very good into that Zamazenta is you can run this like Terra Ghost, right? And pair it beside your Flutter Mane. You can actually just put the Sash on Flutter Mane, right? So it's going to eat the Heavy Slam or it's going to eat the Behemoth Bash. And then, yes, you lose the specs, but you gain the Beads of Ruin, right? So now you're threatening with a Terra Fairy, Moonblast, and a Heat Wave or a Dark Pulse that can just basically clean up that Zamazenta. I do think Chi-Yu plus Flutter Mane will actually be a good counter into that strategy as well. That's going to be all for the Zamazenta counters. I hope that this video helps you do better into the Zamazentas that are surely about to come on the ladder since it just won the Stockholm Regional. Let me know down in the comment section below, what are your approaches to countering Zamazenta? Is it some of the things I've mentioned, or do you have a more unique way at approaching Zamazenta? I hope you learned something from this video. Keep practicing, and I'll see you on the next one.